Do you have a true, strange story of the unexplained? Submit it now on madamestrangeways.com or email madamestrangeways@gmail.com. I can't wait to read it. Welcome, strangers, strangelings, strange cetera, and strange Selenius, to Madame Strangeways, where I, Madame Strangeways, narrate your true strange stories of the unexplained. And as always, solicited or not, usually not, I share my strange thoughts and even stranger observations, and drag you down a slew of strange rabbit holes, kicking and screaming, if needs must. Today I've got one new true strange story for you. But first, a strange shout out to my Patreon patrons: TJ Hodder, Gmanmusic, Ted, Keith, and Tori. Thank you so much to my feral fiendish 5 for supporting the show. Now, do you want to hear your name at the beginning of every episode? How about an exclusive sticker? Or access to Madame Strange Notes, aka voice notes of whatever strange stuff pops into my brain. I could have said strange brain there, and I didn't, so you're welcome. Join the Patreon at madamestrangeways.com. And while you're there, grab yourself some strange merch. You've earned it. And now, on to our true strange story, here on Madame Strangeways. I live in the heart of Appalachia, and this is easily the most terrifying story of one of my experiences. By Doobydoopy. This story may be short, or it may be drawn out. I am recounting these events as I type, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I have experienced. And it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia and have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. I was with a friend. I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening, doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail to smoke a joint. This is not a particularly long trail, but it is very dense in the woods that surround it, and it is easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally get to about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stop, pack our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for the time was unsettling. At this point, it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. And as soon as the forest goes quiet, there is a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain. Almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer, per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quieting or stopping. At this point, I am convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail, gasping for breath, and almost at the verge of tears of how frightening this was. We begin to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there is a bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. This was not an animal. This was not someone playing or watching a movie. This scream sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was the most genuinely depraved and violent scream that I have ever heard. This is a true story that I have only told to maybe 3 people, all of whom seem to brush it off as false. I've never been a person to push for the existence of the paranormal or spiritual, but I genuinely believe I encountered something inhuman in those woods. Edit. I know I will receive questions such as what the voice was possibly saying or to explain the area and what happened after. I genuinely cannot remember what the voice was saying, if anything intelligible. I don't know if I could understand it then, and I certainly can't recall understanding it after several years of blocking it out of my memory. All that I recall is that it was a fluctuating voice in pitch, shaking, almost just joining sounds together. After running from the scream at the end of the trail, we ran to the car, which was only about 5 more minutes from the trail, so we got there relatively fast from sprinting. Dooby-doopy-doo. Dooby-doo. Like Zooby-Zooby Zoo? Anyone? Okay. Sorry, I've been thinking about it since I read the username. You can't convince me. There's no one in this world that can convince me that sometimes these supernatural creatures don't know exactly what they're doing and are just messing with us. Because if this really is something supernatural or unexplained, or paranormal, etc., it didn't have to scream like that at the end. They were already scared, creature, unknown, mysterious, unexplained creature. They were already scared. They were already running back to their car. Completely unnecessary to scream right behind them like that. Just totally unnecessary. Dooby doopy, thank you again for allowing me to share this, because what a terrifying story. I appreciate you letting me share this on the show. So I do have some theories, some of them paranormal, some of them more naturalistic and mundane, as I tend to do, because I like to have a little balance, a little sweet with a little savory, a little spooky with a little comforting. At least the mundane is generally comforting, not always more comforting, but in some cases more comforting. In this case, I think specifically. Before I get too deep into that, though, I did kind of want to address, because I read the comments on the Reddit post, and, I think I do love, because I will also do the same. I do love when someone points out that something could potentially be a hallucination. And if you've listened to the show more than once, you have probably heard me talk about how common hallucinations are and how they don't mean that you're crazy and how we just don't really talk about it. And so we don't realize how common it is. I'm not going to go into a hallucination conversation. Ooh. Hallucination? I guess that's basically just a typo, a misspelling of hallucination. But someone in the comments was saying, well, you are smoking weed and weed can sometimes lead to hallucinations. Okay. But like probably not here. I will say, yeah, that's totally possible. And it is true that if you are smoking the devil's lettuce outside of your normal setting, you do feel way more high. I don't know the science behind it. I don't know the weed science. I just know that it's true. So I would say, yeah, maybe, but they also specifically, doobydoopy clearly specifically says that this is not the first time that they've done this. This is not the first time that they've smoked weed out in the forest. First of all, you wouldn't catch me in the Appalachian forest, period, full stop, let alone inebriated in any way. So dooby-doopy, you're braver than I am. But I don't think that that has anything to do with this. I think that it's worth looking at, but I think that we can discount anything to do with being high. Least of all because there were two people. There was Doobie and Doobie's best friend. And while, yes, there's such a thing as mass delusion, that's completely a thing. And while, yes, there is that French term that I tried just now to practice saying, but I can't, come on. I don't know. I'm not good at it. Anyway, it means like madness of two. I don't think that's what this is. So let's stop talking about it, please, madam. Please, let's continue. So Appalachia, not Appalachia. No, no, no. Appalachia. Don't ask me why. Please don't ask me because then I'm going to look into it and we're going to be here for an hour. So Appalachia, if you're unfamiliar, is an infamous area of the United States, specifically the Appalachian Mountains. Did you know the Appalachian Mountains were actually formed about-ish 300 million years ago? That's crazy. I just like our Appalachian Mountains, like the Appalachian Mountains in the United States and also in part of Northeast Canada. That's crazy. That's really old. That's so old. That's so long ago. 300 million years ago? They used to be as tall as the Himalayas, but they're shorter now. Okay, sorry, going back. So there's some of the oldest mountains on Earth. I wanted to know what is the oldest mountain on Earth, and apparently it's the Barberton, I believe, mountains in South Africa. So there's that. But nope, we've got the Appalachian Mountains. They're not quite as old, but here's what I thought was so fascinating and I didn't know this till I was looking this up. So the Appalachian Mountains, if you go way back in time, I don't know how long ago. Let's find out. Okay, so Pangea, which if you're not familiar, is back a very long time ago, specifically in the Triassic and possibly Jurassic time period. Okay, so sorry. So 200 million years ago, Pangea was basically back when the world had all of the continents kind of smashed together, just in one giant glob. And then 200 million years ago, Pangea started to break apart. And when it broke apart, we actually saw that parts of the Appalachian Mountains kind of stayed with a bunch of different continents. So obviously we see it in North America, but you also see it. It covers like Ireland. Did I say Norway? Norway. There's somewhere over. The Iberian Peninsula. So Spain and Portugal. And then you also see Morocco has some of it. Oh, and all of Greenland. I always get Iceland and Greenland mixed up. All of the smaller one and just one coast of the larger one. So that's so interesting. So the Appalachian Mountains are not just in North America. They're also in Europe and they're also partially in Africa. However, of course, in this specific story, we are talking about the North American, specifically the American Appalachian Mountains. And I think this story in particular is happening in West Virginia, close to what's called the New River, which should really instead be called the Extremely Old River because it is actually the oldest river in the world. And how old is that? I don't remember. Hold on. Let me check my notes. Up to 320 million years in age. That's crazy. And like apparently some regions of the New River actually predate the Appalachian Mountains themselves. Also, fun fact. Is it fun? It's happened. It's a fact for sure. It's definitely a fact. The New River goes north. Like it flows north when almost all the other rivers in the country go south. There's probably more there. I'm having to hold myself back from looking into what that means. What does that mean? Is that it's special? I don't know. Why am I talking about how old Appalachia is? Okay, well, obviously, I have a point. Well, I hope that you understand that I did have a point. Because some of the theories that I've been reading about Appalachia and why it's so scary and why it's like, oh, you got to cover your windows with curtains at night, which I do anyway. That's crazy to think that there's people out there that need to be told that. But specifically, they're telling you to do that if you live in Appalachia because of the things that you will see, or I guess the things that will see you. Very scary. Or why it's like, don't whistle, or yeah, no, you shouldn't whistle because then something might whistle back. But also if you hear whistling in the woods, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Go back inside, close and lock the door, close the curtains. Or blinds if you have them. Maybe both. Let's do both, just to be safe. But as a reason to explain why Appalachia has this huge amount of like legendary creatures and cryptids and ghost stories and hauntings, etc. Why is that? And so I've heard some of the theories be that, well, Appalachia is ancient. It's ancient. And so maybe there's something, primal or something even primordial even. Maybe because it's been around for so many millions of years, it's possible that there's something maybe not otherworldly, but definitely terrifying that lives in those mountains that we're not able to normally see because we're just dumb, squishy humans who don't see in multiple dimensions. I don't know, but I feel like it's a compelling argument. Well, maybe not compelling, but it's scary to me. I guess like the thought that like, man, just like on a purely primitive level, thinking like, what do you mean we're not at the top of the food chain? Thinking that something has survived this long and the only way that we ever encounter it is in these really scary, like Appalachian stories. Very, very scary. I mean, people go missing in Appalachia all the time. Oh no, I'm wondering how often. Is it super? Okay, stop. I'm not going to. Okay, this is a topic for another time. Do you want to hear more about Appalachia from me? Email me, madamestrangeways@gmail.com, so I can stop going off on rabbit holes on this one because I want to get to the theories. So if people are talking about maybe this is why there's something to do with, this is why there's so many scary things in Appalachia is because it's just ancient. It's just so old. Who knows what's there? Who knows what's out there hiding from humans for all this time? And I was on board. I was like, this is really, really scary. I want to know more. That's a great theory. Let's dig in. So I thought, okay, if the issue is the Appalachian Mountains exactly themselves and how old they are, I was like, oh, I'll go look at other cultures that also have remnants of the Appalachian Mountains. Clearly, that they're going to have the same level of scary stuff there. And that's just not what I'm finding. I'm not finding that. The level of scary shit, for lack of a better term, that comes out of Appalachia in North America, completely unmatched. Completely unmatched. And so I think a more reasonable reason for all of the hauntings and all the scary stuff to come out of Appalachia in North America specifically is just the sheer amount of human suffering that's happened there. So of course there were indigenous people there. I think specifically you're seeing a lot of Cherokee, and especially in the region where the story happened in West Virginia. I could be wrong. Please correct me, madamestrangeways@gmail.com. So the indigenous people were here and they obviously had some cultural stories about the mountains and probably some stories, that are made to pass along wisdom like, hey, kids, don't go in the forest because you'll die. Don't do that. So we'll tell scary stories. But it's just impossible to pick apart and figure out what stories were actually from the indigenous peoples and which came from the European settlers who came from, Germany, who came from, the Scots-Irish, which I just learned. I think I've looked this up before, but I didn't retain it. Scots-Irish means you're a Scot who moved to Ireland. So the Scots-Irish, the Germans, I guess just the English in general, and then some other various Europeans, they came over and they brought their slaves from Africa, possibly from the Afro-Caribbean too, but I think specifically in the time of like the 1600s and the 1700s and the 1800s, well, specifically 1600 and 1700, I think that was probably more likely to be from Africa. It's closer to Europe, so it's more convenient. Chattel slavery made more convenient by their proximity to Europe. That just sucks. So first of all, whenever Europeans show up, that's not a good time for the indigenous tribes. Not good, right? But then you've got the Europeans who've moved over here. And while, yeah, they've almost definitely had different types of hardship on their own, living in a new world, and it's just going to be difficult, and you're going to starve, and things aren't going to go how you want them to go. And it's not good. It's not good. And when you have that kind of amount of human suffering, there's like a couple things that happen. Oh, there's more than that, but just for the purpose of this conversation, when you have that amount of human suffering in one location, you could argue from a paranormal or a spiritual standpoint that it does kind of like leave its mark, or a stain, in the area. And maybe that has something to do with the kinds of energy and the kind of things that come out of that. But also, if you look at it from a naturalistic standpoint, I think it does make sense that if you are going through such hardship, that you do become very spiritual and you do develop these very different spiritual beliefs that are this crazy amalgamation of, African and European, Nordic, and also indigenous Native American. So I think it's completely understandable. Oh my God, hold on. I haven't even talked about the Civil War. You want to talk about suffering? Unmarked graves, like just so much death. So talk about leaving a stain on an area. And okay, again, we're not even talking about the mines. The mines. So much suffering and so much death. So I think that's probably the reason why you see that sort of stuff happening specifically with the North American Appalachian Mountains and not with the remnants of the Appalachian Mountains that you find in the other continents. So that's just my take. There is a crazy amount of spooky, paranormal, supernatural stuff that happens. It's like a hotbed for some of the most famous American unexplained stories. The Mothman. Everyone loves Mothman. Who doesn't love Mothman? Mothman is also from West Virginia specifically. Do you know the name of the town or city? Give you a moment. Point Pleasant. Yay. Everyone loves Mothman. And West Virginia, again, is where doobydoopy is based. Although I don't think this was, spoiler alert, I don't think this was Mothman. There wasn't a bridge, just to begin. The Bell Witch. Have you heard of the Bell Witch? Said to be like the most famous haunting in America. I think it was actually a poltergeist though, so I don't remember why. Maybe I need to do a deep dive, or I need to do an episode on the Bell Witch. Do you want to hear about the Bell Witch? Send me an email, madamestrangeways@gmail.com. Also, I can't not mention the Not Deer, which I've mentioned in previous episodes. I think some of the very early episodes, which I'm embarrassed. Don't go. If you're listening to this episode now, I don't love the idea of you listening to an earlier episode if you haven't already listened to it, because I didn't know what I was doing. I still barely know what I was doing now. It's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing for people to see you not be perfect at things, or maybe not everybody has that hang up, but I do. But you know what? I had to start somewhere. So you can go listen, I guess, to the earlier episodes where I do talk about Not Deer very terrifying. Then, I mean, just really quickly, there is Bigfoot. Obviously, who doesn't love Bigfoot? If you love Bigfoot, I have a Cryptid Palooza episode about Bigfoot. So go listen to that. Check that out. Then there's like flavors of Bigfoot. So there's like the wood booger, and there's Sasquatch, and there's Grassman, and then there's Sheep Squatch, which from the drawing I'm looking at right now doesn't look anything like a Sasquatch. So I'm intrigued, but I am going to hold back and not look at it. Then apparently there's a chupacabra specific to Appalachia, creatively called the Appalachian Chupacabra. It feels like we could have been a little bit more creative with that one. Now, if I had written this episode like a good podcaster, that would have been a great segue. But for now, we're going to talk about the naturalistic, aka mundane explanations for what might have happened. So just as a reminder, if this is your first time listening to the show, I like to offer possible naturalistic explanations. And that is purely coming from the angle of trying to show you that you can feel afraid and not be in danger. So some of the things that we see that are unexplained, maybe it's just, it has a mundane explanation and everything's fine and you don't need to be scared of it anymore. Now that's me. That has helped me tremendously when I used to be really scared about evil, invisible entities that could be possibly sitting in the room right next to me, trying to ruin my life. That really helped me figuring out what's a mundane explanation for something that I'm experiencing. Hopefully it helps you. Hopefully it helps someone listening. So that's why I like to talk about naturalistic, aka mundane explanations. We've already ruled out visual hallucinations. I genuinely think that it's fair to rule that out because there were 2 of them. Okay, so let's remove that. I will say, though, that being really scared or really stressed definitely interferes with the way that you process information properly. So if something was really, really scary out there and both of them got really, really scared, like I've said before, our brains are 2 things: super lazy, which I get it, same, and they are pattern-seeking machines. And so when you combine those 2 things together, what it means is that your brain just takes a shortcut, especially if it needs to make a snap decision and it's scared and it's trying to save your life. That's when you see these like really sloppy assumptions that your brain makes. So it doesn't wait to have all the information. It gets as much information as it thinks it needs in order to tell you if you're in danger or not. So if you've ever just been spooked by something and then realized there was nothing, like, I don't know, like sometimes I will see something out of the corner of my eye and I'll get really scared. And it was, I don't know, like a shadow from something in the window or the cat, Cleopatra. Maybe it's Cleopatra, and Cleopatra has spooked me, and I realized, oh my God, no, everything's fine. If you've ever been spooked like that, where your heart just feels like it's climbing into your throat, and it was so nothing, and you were scared over nothing, that is your brain trying to keep you safe, saying, oh, sorry, my bad. I thought it was a monster, or I thought it was a cougar. Got to get out of here. Hey, lady, get out of here. Take your leopard print clothing and your Mai Tai? No. What drink would a cougar drink? An appletini? Perhaps? What is the one that a Manhattan? Take that. Get out of here, you cougar. Get it? Because it's a cougar? Because it has 2 meanings. Okay. We're just going to move on. So your brain is trying to tell you, you were in danger, and then actually you weren't in danger at all. That sort of thing happens, especially when you're in the dark and something has scared you. So do you see where I'm going with this? I think maybe there were other things happening and their brains both interpreted it as danger, and understandably. And so they start running, their heart's pounding, their brain is telling them they're in danger. Okay, but then I don't know how to explain that shriek that they heard. Maybe was it like an owl, a screech owl? Okay. Doobydoopy specifically said it wasn't a big cat because they know what those sound like. So it wasn't that. I would argue that when you're in that state of fear, probably you are not the best judge. However, I do trust that they know what they're talking about. So I will just mention that it's possible that it was an animal. And like maybe Dooby knows what a big cat sounds like, but maybe hasn't had like some kind of owl screech right in front of or right behind them. You know? I don't know. You're never going to catch me in the Appalachian forest or the Appalachian mountains. So I'm never going to find out. So those are two possible explanations, but I do believe that this happened. Something happened and it definitely scared them for sure. 100%. So now moving on to the paranormal or supernatural explanations for what might have happened. So I mentioned Bigfoot. It could be Bigfoot. Although you as in dooby, you did not smell anything stinky. You said in the comments because someone else suggested Bigfoot. I thought Bigfoot. Someone else in the comments suggested Bigfoot. Well, they specifically asked, did you smell anything bad? Because typically Bigfoot, Sasquatch, etc. does have a smell that comes along with it. But I will say Bigfoot has these vocalizations that it can make. And if you have listened to my Bigfoot episode, my aforementioned Bigfoot episode, you can hear clips of what's called the Sierra Sounds, which is, it allegedly captures Bigfoots, because it's not big feet, plural, you'll learn that in the episode. It is allegedly capturing Bigfoots making what's called samurai chatter, which basically just sounds like Japanese men yelling in the forest. I mean, it's not English, but it does sound like a human tongue. And Dooby said in the comments that they don't remember what was being said, or they don't even remember if it was intelligible enough. I think it's possible. And Bigfoot has a way of like running people out of the forest, but like alongside them, kind of like escorting them out, but with fear and terror. So there's also in Cherokee folklore, the raven mocker, which I think is such a cool word. What a cool name. So in Cherokee mythology or beliefs, I should say, the raven mocker is this evil spirit or witch that preys on the sick and dying, and I think also children, and it sucks their life force to extend their own life. And they do have this weird sound that sounds like a raven's call. That's why they're called the raven mocker, because they're mocking a raven, which, okay, that sounds like fine and all, but they also can be invisible, like the Predator in the movie The Predator. They can be invisible. It's really scary. And ravens, while they are not humans, ravens can sound like humans. They can mimic. I don't know if you knew that. Now you know. Kind of like parrots, ravens can make human sounds, and they can like mimic you saying, I don't know, hello, probably want a cracker. I don't know what you tell a raven. I guess nevermore. Obviously. What was they thinking? That's what you would have a raven say. Clearly. But what I want to talk about is the taily-po. Now, alternate names include taily bone, taily bones, tailbones, taily tail, and then different varieties of spelling taily-po, strangely. So taily-po is about the size of a dog, but apparently it has like tufted ears like a bobcat, which I love. That's like the best part of a bobcat are the little ear tufts. I love it. Cleopatra has little ear tufts. So cute. So I assume that the taily-po is also cute because it has little kitty cat ear tufts. So depending on the storyteller, it has either yellow eyes or red eyes, which is not good. And it has/had a long tail, which you may be wondering why I said that in the past tense. Well, that's because the story that's told about the taily-po is about an old hermit who lived in the middle of nowhere, I guess. Or I guess that's the whole thing that a hermit does. That's a hermit's whole thing. So this hermit lives, I think he's got a name. I'm not going to name him. I feel like he does have a name in some of the stories. We're moving on. The hermit who lives out in the middle of nowhere with his 3 hounds, and he's hungry. And then one night, I guess there's different versions. So sometimes the Tailipo comes into his house and sometimes he's out hunting. I like the one where he comes into the house because that's scarier. One night, when the old hermit and his dogs are in the house, this strange creature comes into a hole in the ground and he's really hungry. Not the creature, the hermit. The hermit's really hungry because all he has is a handful of beans, like that Mickey Mouse cartoon where they're slicing the beans and they're slicing the bread. You know, where it's like transparent? I wanted it. I wanted to eat that bread and those beans when I was a kid. So that's his life. Picture that. He's having to ration slices of beans. Then this creature comes in his house and he's like, man, that looks like good eating. So he tries to kill it, but he only manages to chop off its tail. So the Tailipo escapes without its tail. And this hermit, because he's a hermit, so he's really weird because he hasn't actually encountered people in a really long time, thinks it's okay to cook a weird, skinny, weird possum-looking tail for his dinner, for his soup. I guess I've never been that hungry, so I guess I shouldn't judge him. And I hope that I never, ever find myself in a situation where that seems appealing. But he did. He cooked it up. He ate it, goes to sleep. Well, that night, the creature, the Tailipo, comes back into the house through the hole that he, for some reason, didn't like board up or anything. He left it just open. Don't worry. Don't ask questions. It comes back into the room while he's sleeping, and it's at the end of his bed, and it tells him in English that it's looking for its Tailipo. It says something like, give me back my Tailipo. Where's the quote? I'm looking for the quote on this page. Guys, there's a quote and I can't find it. Whatever, that's what he says. Give me back my Tailipo. And the guy's scared, sicks his dog on it, and the dog, okay, don't worry about it. The point is, by the end, the Tailipo keeps coming back and terrorizing him and saying, give me back my Tailipo. I don't know why it's called a Tailipo. It's possible that this actually originated in African culture and that this is a story from there that has been kind of combined, like I said, with the mishmash hodgepodge of cultures. So Tailipo. And then at the end of the story, in some versions, the old hermit is like torn to shreds, or the only thing left of the old hermit's cabin is the chimney, presumably because the Tailipo destroyed everything. I'm not sure how it did that. The point is, that's the story of the Tailipo. Okay. Sounds terrifying, honestly, especially because it just keeps coming back into his room every night. And he's laying there like, oh, please don't come back tonight. But he ate it. He can't give the tail back. I don't know if that was clear, guys. He can't give the tail back because he ate it. It's not happening. Tail's gone, Tailipo. You need to stop coming in people's houses uninvited. Come on. That's what really got me about the Tailipo, is specifically that the Tailipo speaks some English, and in every single version of the story, it repeats itself. Like, give me back my Tailipo. And what we heard in Doobydoopy's story was that they were still hearing the voice and it was keeping pace with them, right? And so it sounds repetitive to me. So it's constantly talking as it's chasing. So think about it. What if that was what was chasing Doobydoopy, is the Tailipo, and it's just keeping pace with them as they're running out of the forest, and it just keeps saying, give me back my Tailipo, give me back my Tailipo. Although I thought it was really creepy how it was described like those old toys. Okay, but you know what I was thinking though? It was like, what's the song that has that in the background? The Speak and Spell, Behind Blue Eyes, Limp Bizkit. Like, is that what it was sounding like? Is that what it sounded like? Because maybe it would sound something like, give me back my Tailipo. Give me. Oh, wait, hold on. Okay, it's this. Give me back my Tailipo. Give me back my Tailipo. I think I nailed it. Doobydoopy, Let me know, madamestrangeways@gmail.com. Let me know how accurate that was, because I think I nailed it, if that's what it's supposed to sound like, which clearly it is. So for this one, I think I had to land on that's mysterious. That's mysterious. Maybe it was the Taily Po. Maybe it was a scary owl. Maybe it was an owl and a Taily Po working together. Maybe that's the situation. Either way, I'm happy that nothing like this has ever happened again. I hope nothing like this ever happens in the future. Although I did see that doobydoopy commented saying that they have heard a woman screaming in the forest before, and then specified it was not a big cat, which is also scary. So stop hearing things scream. Have you thought of that? Just stop hearing them scream. I guess that's just life in Appalachia, man. Or maybe, just maybe, this was just a Civil War ghost who was kind of annoyed that you guys didn't offer it any weed. Puff, puff, pass, man. Puff, puff, pass. Anyway, in all seriousness, doobydoopy, thank you so much for allowing me to share your story on the show. Again, I'm sorry that you had to experience that. It sounds terrifying, but I do so appreciate you trusting me with your story. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining me for more true, strange stories of the unexplained. Remember that you can feel afraid and not be in danger. You're safe here with me. Probably. Please follow the podcast, leave a rating on Spotify or Apple, or tell your friends and foes about the show. It would mean the world to me. The underworld, obviously. I mean, come on. Madame Strangeways is produced and narrated by me, Madame Strangeways. Theme music is by Marina Ryan at marinamakes.co. Cover art is by Andrea Giselle Roldan at Cult of Teddy on Instagram. You can submit your own true strange story at madamestrangeways.com or send in your thoughts or theories on stories on the show to madamestrangeways@gmail.com. See you soon, she said, ominously. It's okay. So one of them. Okay, Google says the American pronunciation is foliadur, which that doesn't sound right. The British pronunciation. I don't know why they don't have just like
That's
French.
Oh, the American pronunciation is foliator, which that doesn't sound right. The British.
Okay, well, okay. Thank you, Google. Didn't ask. It's interesting. Google doesn't reply to me when I need it to. And then when I'm recording an episode, here it is.